Hello everyone. Sorry, I'm grabbing my drink. We are live. It is 11 a.m. Central Time. I don't know if there's anyone here who is from Texas, but I'm sure you'll empathize with all of the allergies. I'm a little bit out of sorts. I see Sarah Penner, so we are going to be talking with Sarah Penner today about her newest book, The London Seance Society, and let me get Sarah on here to discuss all things about the supernatural and seance and her new book. Hopefully my internet will cooperate. I feel like...
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Hi. I'm well. How are you?
Thank you.
I love your
it kind of looks like yours. Yeah, I have like these awesome built-in bookshelves, and of course they're always full, and I'm having to like curate the ones out so that I can keep the books I want.
Right? I know. It's like I feel like a rotation, which is so fun to, trade out books
thank you
and
so
stuff.
much for having me today, Jen. This is really exciting.
Oh my gosh, I so appreciate it. I know how busy you are. I saw that you're on the New York Times list. I mean, you're like your newest book or your previous book, The Last Apothecary, is being made, I believe, into a series. Like you are, it sounds like you're a busy lady. And I so appreciate you taking the time to chat about your newest book, which is The London Seance Society, which I have to be honest, normally mysteries are not the first thing I gravitate towards. I couldn't put it down. I loved every minute of it. It was a page turner. It was so female forward and the supernatural. And so before I give too much away, would you mind giving everyone just a little taste about your book and I guess
definitely.
A quick synopsis.
So The London Seance Society is my sophomore novel. So as you mentioned, my debut is The Lost Apothecary. It came out 2 years ago. It, I think, exceeded a lot of people's expectations in terms of sales. I know it certainly exceeded my expectations. And so I felt a lot of pressure kind of going into this book 2 journey, but I knew that I wanted to write a ghost story, and I wanted to steer clear of a haunted house. I wanted to take kind of a fresh and different approach to my ghost story. So I went with the art of seance, and the London Seance Society is about a woman in high Victorian London. So the year is 1873, and she is known worldwide for her ability to conjure the spirits of murder victims to ascertain the identity of the people who killed them. And she's kind of best in class, and she gets a knock on her door one day from a young woman who has lost her little sister under suspicious circumstances. And she's a skeptic. She doesn't believe in the art of seance, but she's desperate to find out what happened to her little sister. So together, these two women try to uncover this murder mystery, but they begin to suspect they are possibly entangled in another crime themselves. So as you mentioned, Jen, it's totally full of feminist elements, cliffhangers, twists. This book in particular, the last third of the book takes place at a seance. And
oh my God,
you choose the largest. That's okay.
Sorry, my computer's going off. I think we're possessed. What the heck is happening? I'm so sorry.
Totally
I don't know what's going on.
That was technology
the weirdest thing ever.
I totally get it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone's presenting themselves. I'm so sorry to interrupt. That was the weirdest thing.
So yeah, together the two women, it's basically like a whodunit. We learned very early on that there are a couple of murders that need to be solved, and so we watch these two women as they try to solve this crime. And as you mentioned, it was an instant New York Times bestseller. It's going to be translated into more than 20 languages. So I'm very excited with how it's been doing, and I've been having a lot of fun traveling around the country talking about it.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And congratulations on being such a huge bestseller, especially being a sophomore novel. I know I don't know, but just watching and you know, talking to many authors and writers, like how hard and challenging that is to have such a great successful sophomore novel. So that's amazing, and to create one that is
Yep.
just such a page turner and so fun. I love that you went with the seance route as opposed to like a haunted house, or something in that sort of realm. Can you speak a little bit about what was like, how did you come to that idea, and how did you start? Like, where was the beginning
Yes,
of this?
so
Where was that
actually, it's
kernel?
kind of a funny story. My mother, she's a big believer in ghosts and the spirit world, and I'm more of a skeptic. It's not that I don't believe in ghosts, but I haven't had a personal experience with one. But many of my friends and people that I have a great deal of respect for have shared that they have had what they think are interactions or encounters with the spirit world. So my mother said to me a couple of years ago that she wanted to go to a seance, and being the skeptic that I am, I was kind of taken aback. I laughed. That was my initial reaction. And my mom got real serious and she said, no, I want to go to a real seance. I don't want this to be a joke. So it just so happens that about 90 minutes from where I live here in Florida, there's this old village that was founded in the 1800s, and they still have a lot of residents living there who are practicing psychics or mediums. And the village is called Casadega. It's very rural, very small. There's like one street, no stoplights. And my mother and I went to Casadega for 2 nights, and we went to a seance. And I will admit, I was kind of hoping to like walk out with some really great story or some tangible proof of ghosts. That's not what happened. But what did happen was that there was an older couple across the room, and they were very emotional at the end of the seance. And they shared that they had recently lost their infant grandchild. And that child's mother, who was their daughter, they were estranged from her. And so they had never been able to form a bond or relationship with this baby. So they were going to these seances once a week to essentially find this sense of peace and kind of process their grieving. And it was bringing them a great deal of happiness. And so I realized in that moment, this isn't about proof of ghosts. This isn't about what's right or wrong. And the spirit world is maybe not so black and white, but it's just about respecting that some people do believe in this. And for some people, this is part of their grieving process. And so that ended up being a really meaningful takeaway for me at the end of that seance.
Oh wow, that's really special. One of the things that I was like kind of kept coming up for me a bit about it is that fine line between the supernatural and your own intuition, and listening to your intuition, and you know, whether that's like, I feel funky, this feels off, or I suspect it's this. And I felt like often with the women, it was mainly the women who had these like gut feelings, who were told that they were wrong, or, you know, like were sort of banished from this group. Was that an intentional?
When I first started researching Victorian London and their obsession with the occult, because the Victorians, they were obsessed with spirits. The wealthy were constantly hosting seances for their friends in their parlor rooms. And just the Victorians, they loved this mediumship side of things. And so what I learned, and this was really interesting in the beginning of my research, was that one of the only professions in Victorian London in which women were more respected than men was as a spiritualist. And part of that is because they believed, the society believed, that men were too conceited and closed off to allow a spirit to take control of their psyche, whereas women were viewed as more open to this and better able to function as a conduit from the living to the dead. And when I found that research tidbit, I was so excited, because my books, for anyone who's read them, knows that I love telling stories in which women are empowered and they're ahead of their times, whether intellectually or in their profession or what have you. So to find out that this was one of the only professions in which women were more respected than men, I knew I was onto something. And my first character that came to mind is Vaudeline. She's the spiritualist. She's Parisian, she's a seductress, and she's also very good at seance. And so I kind of shaped her in the way that I imagined, just like this really powerful expertise woman who would have control of a room in a society where women didn't often have control of the room.
Mm-hmm. That's a great analogy. Like that is, I love that that you said that they had control of the room, because it really was an empowering moment for these women, and to watch them come into their own and own that space. I think that's a great way of describing it, and you did so beautifully. You mentioned the research that you did. Now, did you get to travel at all for your research?
Yeah,
did you get
so
to London and Paris?
I've been to both cities. I've been to London countless times. For work. So I haven't mentioned this yet, but I have a background 13 years in finance, and we had a commodities trading office out in London that I visited regularly. And after the success of The Lost Apothecary, and then when I sold my second book, The London Seance Society, I was able to quit my day job. And so now I write full time. But to answer your question, that work experience brought me to London many times. I've always been so in love with that city. I feel like it's magical. And there are so many, for anyone who's been to London, they know there's so many beautiful buildings, and kind of between them, there's like these cobblestone alleyways or these bricked over doors that look like they haven't been opened in hundreds of years. And there's just, for a novelist like myself, those are just open windows to story ideas. So I've been to London. I've been to Paris. My husband actually proposed to me in Paris 8.5 years ago. So that city is special to my heart as well. But most of my research was around just understanding from historical texts and resources what spiritualists did in that era and kind of how they operated their businesses.
Wow. Did you find, when you were, I mean, this is obviously a dark subject. There's the light and the dark with spiritualism. I mean, did you find that you were maybe less afraid of death, or did it change your views on the supernatural?
That's a really interesting question that I haven't been asked yet. It did not change my personal views on anything. And I think the reason for that is I approached this story from a very fictional perspective. I knew that my characters were all fictional. The murders were fictional. The uncovering of the truth was fictional. And I never really, maybe it was like a subconscious protection thing, but I never really let myself kind of sit with the possibility, I guess, that any of this could have been real. So, like I said, when I went to that seance with my mom, I was kind of hoping that something exciting might come out of that, and it didn't. And I'm open to having an experience with the spirit world, and maybe something like that will someday change my personal viewpoints. But I'm still waiting for that moment. And for whatever reason, spirits don't seem particularly fond of me. So I don't know what's going on.
No, I mean, I also find it so interesting too, with what it's all about perception as well, I guess, sometimes, like some things are so easily explained, or like my computer having like a moment and a weird glitch all of a sudden, it's like that that veil that like we can like my computer's having a weird glitch, but maybe it's something else. I think it's so, approach it however way you want.
You said that, because like when your computer started doing that, yes, it's so easy for us to say like, oh, it's just a tech issue, or like something popped in on a browser in the background. But I think we have a tendency to explain a lot of things away, and maybe they don't need to be explained. Like sometimes when a light flickers, maybe it's not the wiring. Maybe there really is some other energy that we just haven't tapped into. Or regularly, like this happens to me all the time. I'll be thinking of someone I haven't talked to in years, and then they'll text me completely out of the blue. And I don't know, I'm completely open to the idea that there is like an energy or a frequency that we don't have access to, but still exists.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, I just had that moment yesterday where I was thinking about someone and talking with my husband about someone, and literally they texted. It was like, I manifest this? Like, how did, like, there's definitely that, like, that invisible thread. You know, even so, like, I don't know if you find this, but sometimes when there's like something that's not working for me, for example, and I'm like, you know, trying to move past it, like cutting that invisible cord as well, sort of symbolic, but it does feel like there is a legitimate energy that we can't see or explain. I don't know. It is, you know, I love hearing stories like that because we all have a collective experience that we try to explain. And the same exact thing could happen to both of us, like the computer, whatever.
So do you believe in ghosts, Jen?
I do, actually. I mean, I had weird experiences as a child where I had a woman who would sit on the end of my bed, and I would get really freaked out, and I would describe her to my mom, and she was this blonde woman, and she'd sit at the end of my bed. And I was probably like, I must have been in like first or second grade, somewhere in there. And I, you know, described this woman. Years and years and years later, I'm speaking to a friend of mine, Peggy Romito, who is sort of, I don't know what hat she wears many hats, but she's an amazing, like, she can channel like crazy things. And she was telling me that my grandmother would sit on my bed, and I never said anything, would sit on my bed when I was a little girl and just watch over me, because she died when my dad was a teenager. And so I never got to meet her. And we're kind of estranged from his family growing up. So I didn't know what she really even looked like. So it was one of those moments that was like, whoa, I don't know how to explain this.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's super.
Yeah.
It's supernatural. Like, I don't, it was a very like wild experience. And it's something like, we grew up Christian and Presbyterian, which had like a bit of you know, sway in terms of how I looked at things for a long time. And it was very scary and afraid. And I think the older that I get, and the more now being a mom and talking to my kids, when they say they see things or feel things that, you know, to me sounds spooky, it's trying to, I guess it's more for them to sort of ease that feeling of, like, it doesn't have to be scary because we can't explain it. So I'm always fascinated by, you know, little things that are unexplainable where we can justify it by saying like, oh, that's a glitch in the electrical system. But
the main themes through my book is what's truth versus what is illusion. And I love like playing with that push and pull in both of my stories, because The Lost Apothecary, there were some magical realism elements. So the characters and the reader were kind of asking themselves, is this magic or is this real? And my hope with this second book is people will ask themselves, is this real ghostly activity or is this a trick or illusion? Because anytime you talk about like these public displays of mediumship or these spiritualists, a lot of them were swindlers, and they would trick unsuspecting audiences with literal smoke and mirrors. And so part of my research was kind of understanding what were some of these more common tricks that people would employ to fool the participants of a seance. And one example I'll give, and the book is full of them, but like, there were these young boys, they were called chimney boys, 5, 6, 7 years old, and their primary responsibility was to get inside of a chimney and brush out all of the soot and the ash. But these mediums, they would hire them to hide inside of a chimney, and at predetermined intervals during the seance, they were instructed to rap on the chimney wall to make it sound like a spirit had entered the room and was trying to communicate. So I really enjoyed kind of learning about all of these tricks, and I don't want to spoil them all, but for anyone who's interested in that, there's a lot of them listed in the book.
Yeah, and I love that, and I love the dichotomy between the you know, the tricks and the actual, you know, seance, and, you know, like, what's the word I'm looking for, like, you're like, you know, in the trance with the spirit. And I think you just did a beautiful job, and I loved, and I especially loved the two characters, Lena and Evie. If you could describe them in one
Oh
word,
my gosh,
how would you describe the two
great
of them?
question. So Evie, she's the little sister who at the beginning of the story we learn that she is no longer alive, and I would describe her in one word as spunky. And Lena, who's kind of the main protagonist telling most of the story, I would explain her as exploring. And I mean that in multiple ways, like exploring belief in ghosts, exploring her sexuality, exploring what she wants to do with her life, etc. Yeah.
That's great. I love that. What are you getting from, or what feedback are you
So,
getting from your readers? Is there anything that's
yeah, a
surprising?
couple things
Sorry.
have been surprising. Well, one, I will say that readers are being a lot harder on this book than I expected. I was actually talking to my agent about this a couple of weeks ago. But there's a couple of things that I think have taken people aback. The first one is there is an LGBT element in the story. I just said that Lena's kind of exploring her sexuality, and she's finding that she's more interested in a woman than she is in a man. And I think a lot of readers went into the book not expecting that and maybe felt a little like caught off guard, which is totally fine and valid. So I've seen some discontent around that. And then, yeah, I know, surprising,
Really?
right? Like it's 2023, but
I thought that was honestly my favorite part of it, was that I love that you were exploring that, because I felt like there was something for everybody. I thought it was beautiful, and I loved her curiosity. I felt like, I feel like you dipped into, like, I feel like you satisfied
yeah.
everyone, for the most part. So I
Thank you
congratulate
so
you on that.
much.
I thought that was one of
Yeah.
my favorite
So,
parts.
and then some people aren't wild about Mr. Morley's perspective. So the story is narrated, of course, by Lena, and then one of the gentlemen who's a part of the London Seance Society, and his point of view is told in first person. And some people have said like they thought that was odd, which is fine. But there have been so many people who have absolutely loved this book, and said that they love it more than The Lost Apothecary, that they love both books equally. I think that at the end of the day, like, I'm so proud of this story. And when I handed it into my editor more than a year ago, I just remember feeling like so accomplished, and like I had told the ghost story that I set out to tell. And so I've been able to kind of withstand, some of the ups and downs. And that's also part of this business. Like, if you're a writer, you're making art, and art is subjective, and some people love certain elements and some people don't. And we as artists just have to be kind of willing to roll with the punches when they come in.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's certainly a fine line, and it's challenging, and those growing pains are
Yeah.
not fun. But I hope that you haven't been getting a lot of flack, because I think, I don't know, your writing is wonderful and beautiful, and I love your characters. I feel like they're very well developed, and it is interesting that what Mr. Morley's character was, an interesting perspective, but I liked it in a way because I felt like it pulled you out a bit into the reality of things. So you were more, I felt more confronted with his perspective, and which I
I love
felt like
that.
helped
Yeah,
the
I love
story
that.
along.
Thank you.
No, thank you. um, and I personally feel like it deserves a follow-up. So are you working on any new stories, or is this something that you feel like
So I
you'll
am
follow
working on
up
the third
with,
book.
or?
It's due to my editor at the end of the year. It's not a follow-up to this story. It's not a sequel. It's a standalone novel, so it's very much its own story, and it takes place not in London. So I knew if I wrote a third book set in London, I would be kind of pigeonholing myself into that city. So my next book takes place on the Amalfi Coast in Italy, and it features a couple of the elements in the story. There's a slew of mysterious shipwrecks. there's present day a woman, a marine archaeologist who goes scuba diving and kind of uncovers some mysteries in this shipwreck. And there's a legend about a coven of witches who lived along the sea in the Amalfi area in the early 1800s. And so I'm kind of having fun weaving these two stories together. But it has a long way to go. I haven't yet even finished the first draft. So, you know, hopefully 2025, that will be available to readers.
That's amazing. Well, hopefully you'll get a lot of travel in your research. Into
my husband and I, we went last year for 2 weeks and we're going back this June for a week. So I'm very excited.
Amazing. That's awesome. My husband and I went for his 40th last year. It was. We were in Amalfi and then we were in where's the Siren News? It's in Amalfi, right?
Those
yes. Sorry, we were there for like 2 days, and I feel like the whole trip was a blur because we hiked the Dolomites and then ended up in Amalfi and then ended up in oh my God, why am I blanking on the name? The town
Ravello?
Reggio?
Yes.
Ravello,
amazing.
Thank you. It was so beautiful. We were up, on this hillside, and it was dreamy. Did some pasta making classes, and I will say, like, I loved walking around. Like, that's my jam. Like, I love to hike. I love to explore a city by running and sort of getting a lay of the land that way. But I'm deathly afraid of heights. So some of these walks, like walk of is it the Walk of the Gods in Amalfi? That one was terrifying at a certain point where I was like, I don't know if I can get across.
Wow.
Like, there's one point where it's like a sheer drop. That was not so fun. And then I think when we were in Ravello, there's like some walking trails, and I'm so excited that you're going to write a book there. It's just
we
so
spent
beautiful.
an afternoon in Ravello, but most of our time we spent in Positano, and then we took a boat one day to the Isle of Capri. So that was all so beautiful.
Yeah. Did you go into that cave, the grotto?
Yeah, we did a few different grottos. I mean, they obviously talk about the Blue Grotto a lot, but there's so many of them all in that area. And that's like part of the setting description I'm so enjoying about this third book is I've never written anything that takes place on the sea. And so I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many magical parts and little nooks and crannies there. It's so beautiful. That'll be so fun. And one of the questions, the last question that I really enjoy and love asking writers is, what are you reading and what do you recommend? So, like, what's your go-to book?
Right now, I just picked up it just came out last week or 2 weeks ago. It's Loyalty by Lisa Scottoline. It's historical fiction and it takes place in Sicily, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's different than what I typically go for. I typically go for like kind of fast-paced mysteries. I love historical mysteries. But this book by Lisa, I'm absolutely loving Loyalty. A book that's coming out that I had an opportunity to read an advanced copy of and loved is The Spectacular by Fiona Davis. Fiona is one of my dear friends and mentors, and we share a literary agent. And that comes out in June, I believe. And it takes place in New York City. It's about a young woman who's a Rockette dancer, but also there's a Big Apple bomber. And so they're kind of trying to solve that mystery as well. So I really like those two books. I recently read Lessons in Chemistry, loved that. But that's one of the things is I have an opportunity as an author to read a lot of advanced copies and kind of get a sneak peek. It's been a good perk of the job for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. I will be sure to buy The Spectacular, it's called.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. It sounds amazing. Again, everyone, we are reading the London Seance Society and talking with Sarah Penner about her newest book. Please go pick up a copy if you haven't already, and I will make sure to link in stories so that everyone can purchase another one.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're so warm and easy to talk to. I so appreciate you having me on.
No, I just likewise. This has just been so fun, and
Oh,
I
well, thank
cannot wait
you
to
so
read
much.
your
Yeah,
next
stay
book.
in touch. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Absolutely.